My husband kicked me out for his sister and her husband, but I got them screwed. I'm not really sure where things started going wrong, but I guess I've been seeing signs for a while now. You ever have that feeling when you look back and wonder how you didn't notice things were going downhill? Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm Anna, 40 years old, and life's been pretty good for me up until recently. I'm a day trader and investor, and I've managed to build a nice life for myself, even though I've got this congenital condition. It's not life-threatening or anything, but it means I've got to be cautious and take it easy sometimes. No pushing myself too hard. That's what the doctors say anyway. The thing is, I've been living a pretty controlled life because of it. I work from home, make decent money, and I was pretty okay with the idea that maybe having kids wasn't in the cards for me. It's something I've made peace with. But that's where John comes in. John, my husband, is 30. Yeah, he's younger than me by a solid decade, which I thought would be a problem at first, but it never really seemed like an issue between us. We met when he was waiting tables at this restaurant I love to go to after work. At first, he was just the cute guy who brought me my food. We didn't really talk much, just small talk here and there, but over time, we became friends. I don't even know how it happened exactly. One day we were just casually chatting, and the next thing I knew, we were meeting up outside of the restaurant, hanging out more and more. Before long, things got serious. I mean, he was sweet, attentive, and just seemed to genuinely care about me. I remember when he first proposed the idea of marriage, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I should say yes because of the whole not being able to have kids thing. I mean, I didn't want him to feel like he was missing out on something. But John was all in. He reassured me over and over again that it didn't matter to him. He said something along the lines of, "If I wanted kids, I'd have chosen someone else." It sounds harsh when I say it now, but at the time it felt comforting. He just wanted me, not some ideal life with kids and all that. So, I believed him. We got married, and things were great at first. John was still working as a waiter, but after a few months he said he wanted to stay home and take care of things. He came up with the idea of being a stay-at-home husband, and honestly, it sounded perfect. "Wouldn't it be easier if I took care of everything at home so you can focus on your work?" he said one night. I agreed because yeah, why not? He loved cooking, and he was always talking about how he wanted to start his own restaurant one day. I thought maybe this could be good for him, a way to experiment with food and practice recipes while I worked. In the beginning, it was amazing. I'd come home, well, not really come home since I work from home, but you know what I mean, to a clean house, meals ready, and everything just felt smooth. I was busy making money, and he was happy doing what he loved, or at least it seemed that way. For a while, I thought we had it all figured out. But then, slowly, things started to change. It wasn't like an overnight switch, but I noticed little things. First, the house wasn't as clean as it used to be. I'd come out of my office at the end of the day, and there'd be dishes in the sink or random clutter all over the living room. John, who used to be so meticulous about keeping everything neat, seemed to let things slide. He started spending more and more time on his computer, playing video games. I'm not against gaming or anything, but it got to the point where he was staying up all night, sleeping during the day, and his whole routine just flipped upside down. I tried to talk to him about it. "John, the house is kind of a mess, and you've been up all night gaming. Can we figure this out?" I remember saying to him one evening when the clutter was just too much to ignore anymore. He looked at me, half apologetic, half annoyed, and said, "Sorry, I'm just really into this new game. I'll finish it soon, and I'll get back to cleaning, I promise." I believed him, for a little while. But then he finished that game and started a new one. The house stayed messy, and I felt like I was living with a roommate, not a husband. I'd walk past him in the morning, and he'd barely acknowledge me, too absorbed in whatever was happening on his screen. I could feel the distance growing between us, but I kept thinking it was just a phase. Maybe he needed a break, some time to unwind before getting back into the groove. But it wasn't just the house or the gaming. John stopped being present. He was physically there, sure, but it felt like he wasn't really there with me anymore. It became normal for him to eat dinner in front of his computer while I ate alone. Sometimes, he wouldn't even eat with me at all. He'd say, "I've got a raid tonight, I'll eat later," and disappear into the other room, leaving me to finish dinner by myself. I know it sounds small, but those dinners alone, they hurt. I used to love sitting down with him after a long day, catching up, sharing stories, laughing. Now I was just eating cold leftovers while he was off in some online world. It wasn't just dinner. At night, John would stay up playing, and I'd go to bed without him. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and he still wouldn't be there. This became our new normal. I'd eat alone, sleep alone, and the guy I married felt like a stranger. I'd ask him where he was going during the day when he'd disappear for hours. "Just shopping," he'd say. But when I'd ask for more details, he'd shrug it off like it wasn't important. I didn't want to be that wife who nags or questions everything, but I couldn't help feeling like something was off. He'd come back with bags of stuff, but never anything I asked for. Just random things that didn't even make sense. It got to the point where I didn't even know what we were doing anymore. I was busting my ass at work, providing for both of us, and he was checked out, living his own life in the same house. I felt like I was married to a ghost. I'd find myself staring at his closed bedroom door, which used to be our bedroom before he practically moved out of it, wondering where the guy I fell in love with went. I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was going on, but I didn't know how to bring it up without causing a huge fight. So I just kept going, hoping things would get better on their own. Looking back, I guess I should have confronted him sooner, but I didn't. I let things slide, thinking it was just a rough patch. But deep down, I knew something had changed, and it wasn't going back to the way it used to be. So after months of dealing with the mess, the late-night gaming, and the constant excuses, I finally had enough. I mean, how long was I supposed to just sit there and watch him slack off while I carried the weight of everything? It wasn't like I was asking him to do something crazy. Just clean the house, cook meals, maybe give me some attention once in a while. You know, normal stuff for a couple living together. I remember one night, after he'd gone off to bed at 4 a.m., again, I was sitting there in the living room just staring at the mess. Clothes thrown everywhere, dishes in the sink, a half-eaten sandwich on the coffee table. It hit me then. This wasn't the life I signed up for. I married John because I thought we were in this together. But suddenly, it felt like I was the only one who cared. The next morning, I decided I couldn't put it off anymore. We had to talk. I walked into the bedroom where he was still passed out, and I just blurted it out. "John, we need to talk, like, seriously talk." He groaned, pulled the blanket over his head, and mumbled, "Can it wait? I'm tired." "No," I said, "it can't wait. I'm tired too, but not just from lack of sleep. I'm tired of feeling like I'm doing this marriage alone." That got his attention. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What are you talking about? I'm here, aren't I?" "Yeah, you're here physically, but you're not here. You stay up all night gaming, you barely talk to me, and the house is a mess. I feel like I'm living with a teenager, not a husband." He just stared at me for a minute, then sighed. "I know, I've been slacking. I've just been stressed, you know? The gaming helps me relax." I almost laughed. "Stressed? John, what do you have to be stressed about? You don't have a job, you don't handle any bills, and the only thing you're supposed to take care of is the house. And even that's falling apart." He looked kind of embarrassed, but instead of apologizing, he just got defensive. "It's not like I don't do anything. I cook, I clean when I can. You act like I'm just sitting around doing nothing all day." "Because you are sitting around doing nothing all day," I shot back. "You wanted to be a stay-at-home husband. That was your idea. I'm working all day so we can live comfortably, and you're acting like a kid who doesn't have responsibilities." He didn't have much to say after that. He just sat there, looking at his hands like they suddenly became the most interesting thing in the world. "I need you to step up," I told him, trying to keep my voice calm even though I was boiling inside. "If you want this to work, you need to start acting like a partner, not just someone who shares the rent-free space." John nodded, but he still wasn't looking at me. "All right," he muttered. "I'll get it together." I wanted to believe him. I really did. I thought maybe this conversation would wake him up, make him realize that he needed to change. But it didn't take long to see that nothing was actually going to happen. At first, he tried to act like things were different. He cleaned the living room, cooked a nice dinner that night, and for a second, I felt a little hopeful. Maybe this was the turning point. Maybe things were about to get better. But that feeling didn't last long. The next few days were back to the same routine. He'd cook, sure, but it was rushed. No care went into it anymore. The meals felt more like something he did out of obligation, not because he actually wanted to. The cleaning? Half-assed at best. He'd vacuum, but leave stuff lying around everywhere. It was like he was doing just enough so I couldn't complain, but not enough to actually make a difference. And then, the gaming? That never stopped. Every night, it was the same thing. I've got a raid with my guild tonight, or I'm almost done with this level. Just give me a bit more time. A bit more time always turned into hours. I'd go to bed alone, and he'd still be up when I woke up for work in the morning. The distance between us was growing wider and wider, and I didn't know how to close it. It wasn't even just about the chores anymore. It was the fact that we weren't connecting at all. We barely talked. He never asked me about my day, never seemed interested in anything I was doing. I'd eat the meals he left me and sit in a quiet, spotless house, feeling like I was invisible. I couldn't remember the last time we had an actual conversation that wasn't about the house or his gaming. I'd even catch myself missing the mess sometimes because, at least then, there was something there. Now, it was like living with a ghost who just happened to do the laundry. I kept telling myself that things would get better if I just gave him some time. Maybe he was going through something and just needed space. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the more I realized I was just making excuses for him. The truth was, I wasn't happy, and I hadn't been for a while. One night, after he'd gone off to his guild battle or whatever, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the dinner he'd left for me. It was still warm, freshly cooked, but I couldn't bring myself to eat it. I just sat there, staring at the food, feeling completely alone in a house I used to love. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront him again, but another part of me felt like it wouldn't matter. What could I even say that I hadn't already said? I'd told him how I felt, and it didn't change anything. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that maybe he didn't care anymore. Maybe the John I married wasn't coming back, and I was just holding on to this idea of him that didn't exist anymore. I was hanging on because I wanted things to go back to how they used to be, but deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. So I sat there in the silence, wondering how I ended up here. Wondering how the person who used to be my best friend became someone I barely recognized. And the worst part? I had no idea how to fix it. That night, I went to bed without saying goodnight, without checking if he was okay. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was what the rest of my life was going to look like. It was a regular evening. I was working in my office, trying to focus, when John walked in, looking more serious than I'd seen him in a while. I hadn't even noticed he'd left the house earlier, but he stood there like he had something big to say. "We need to talk," he said, and just like that my stomach dropped. I knew that tone. I'd heard it before, and it usually meant something I wasn't going to like. I turned away from my computer, trying to stay calm. "Okay, what's going on?" He hesitated for a second, then finally said, "My sister and her husband. They're moving in with us, starting today." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "They're having problems," he explained. "Financial problems. They can't pay their rent anymore, and they need a place to stay. I told them they could stay with us for a while." My brain was struggling to keep up. "So you told them they could just move in? Just like that? Without even asking me?" John shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like I didn't think about it. I knew it might be tough for you, but they're family, Anna. They have nowhere else to go." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We were already dealing with enough issues between the two of us, and now he wanted to bring 2 more people into our house? The house that I paid for? "And where are they supposed to stay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm even though I was getting more frustrated by the second. "We don't have room for 2 more people, John. This isn't a big house." "They can take the guest room," he said like it was no big deal. "It's just temporary." I could feel my blood pressure rising. "Temporary or not, John, you can't just make decisions like this without talking to me. This is my house. I'm the one paying all the bills, and now you're telling me I'm supposed to support 2 more people? I'm paying for stuff too," he said defensively. "Really? What?" You haven't contributed to the bills in months, I shot back, not even trying to hide my frustration anymore. I'm the one paying for everything, and now I have to feed and house your sister and her husband too? How is that fair to me? He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't think it would be that big of a deal. They need help. I need help, John. I need you to step up and actually be a partner in this marriage. We're barely holding it together as it is, and now you want to throw 2 more people into the mix? This isn't about just helping them. You didn't even think about how this would affect us. He didn't have much to say to that. I could tell he was feeling defensive, but I wasn't going to back down. This wasn't a small thing he'd sprung on me. It was huge. How could he not see that? They'll help out around the house, he finally said, like that was supposed to make everything better. They won't just be freeloading. I'll make sure of it. I almost laughed. Help out? John, you're not even helping out right now. How are they supposed to pitch in when we're already struggling to keep this place running? There was a long silence. John looked like he was trying to find the right words, but honestly, I didn't think there were any right words. I was frustrated, and it felt like every day, things were just getting worse between us. Now this? It was like adding fuel to the fire. Before I could say anything else, the doorbell rang. I froze for a second. Is that? John nodded. Yeah, it's them. I told them to come over tonight. Of course he did. Without telling me first. I bit my tongue, trying not to lose it completely. Fine, I said, my voice tight. But we're talking about this later. He nodded quickly and went to answer the door, leaving me standing there, fuming. I couldn't believe this was happening. I was already exhausted from trying to keep our marriage together, and now I had to play host to his sister and her husband too? It felt like I was losing control of everything. When John came back with them, his sister Karen looked tired. Her husband Mike was quiet, but neither of them seemed all that bothered by the fact that they were just moving in. They looked at me, said their polite hellos, and that was it. Like this was normal, like it wasn't a big deal at all. We really appreciate this, Karen said, sitting down on the couch like she already lived there. We've just been struggling so much with rent. The bills, you know? It's been so hard to make ends meet. I forced a smile, nodding along even though I didn't feel like smiling. Yeah, I get it, I said, trying to keep the peace. But inside, I was furious. They didn't seem the least bit uncomfortable about the fact that they were now imposing on my home. No awkwardness, no real gratitude, just entitlement. Don't worry, we'll help out with the housework, Mike chimed in, like that was supposed to make everything okay. And as soon as we get back on our feet, we'll find our own place. Right, I said, though I wasn't convinced. People always say stuff like that, but it never works out the way you think. Something told me they'd be here for longer than they were letting on. And I wasn't sure how much more of this I could take. For the rest of the night, I barely said a word. John and Karen caught up, chatting about old times while Mike sat there like he was trying not to exist. I just sat in the corner, feeling completely invisible. Like my opinion didn't matter at all. Like I was just a bystander in my own house. By the time they finally went to bed, I was mentally and emotionally drained. I felt like I didn't even recognize my life anymore. This wasn't the life I signed up for when I married John. It wasn't even close. And I had no idea how I was supposed to deal with all of this. My checked-out husband, 2 extra people living in my house, and the growing sense that I was losing control of everything I'd worked so hard for. I laid in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I couldn't keep doing this. Something had to give. But I had no idea what to do next. Things got bad fast. From the moment Karen and Mike moved in, everything felt off. It was like they brought this cloud of chaos with them, and suddenly, our house wasn't ours anymore. At first, I tried to be patient. I figured they were stressed, going through financial issues and all that, so I didn't want to make things worse. But man, they really didn't make it easy. The house started falling apart almost immediately. Dirty dishes stacked up in the sink. I couldn't even walk into the living room without stepping over piles of their clothes or moving their junk off the couch just to sit down. It wasn't just a mess, it was disgusting. I'd come home after a long day, and instead of relaxing, I'd find Karen and Mike lounging around, watching TV like they didn't have a care in the world. Meanwhile, I was practically living in a pigsty. And they weren't helping. Not with the cleaning, not with groceries, not with anything. Karen would leave her stuff everywhere, and Mike wasn't much better. Dirty socks, empty cups, snack wrappers, just scattered everywhere. I honestly don't think they lifted a finger to clean the entire time they were there. I mean, how do two adults not even think to help out around the house when they're literally freeloading? I tried to keep it together for a while. I didn't want to be the bad guy. I kept thinking, maybe if I say something, they'll realize how much of a mess they're making and pitch in. But of course, that didn't happen. It only got worse. Finally, I'd had enough. One evening, after stepping on one of Mike's dirty socks for the third time that day, I snapped. John was sitting on the couch with them, like nothing was wrong, just chilling and chatting like this was all normal. I walked over and, trying to stay calm, said, "John, can we talk for a second?" He looked at me, annoyed, but got up and followed me into the kitchen. As soon as we were out of earshot, I let it out. "John, this is getting ridiculous. I can't live like this. They're not helping with anything, the house is a mess, and I feel like I'm the only one who cares." He just stared at me, like I was the one being unreasonable. "They're going through a rough time," he said, almost like he was scolding me. "Can't you just give them a break? A break?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "John, they've been here for weeks. They don't clean, they don't cook, they don't do anything except make the house even worse. I'm tired of picking up after them, and I'm tired of being treated like this isn't my house too." His expression shifted and he looked mad. "So what? You expect me to kick them out? They're family, Anna. They need help." "I'm not asking you to kick them out. I'm asking them to start acting like adults and help around the house. Is that really too much to ask?" I was getting frustrated, and I could feel myself getting louder. That's when it all went downhill. "They're guests," he snapped. "And if you can't respect me in front of my family, maybe you should leave." I stood there, stunned. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," John said, raising his voice now. "If you can't handle this, maybe you're the one who should go. They're family. I'm not kicking them out because you're being selfish." Selfish. That was the word that broke me. Suddenly, I was done. I didn't care anymore. I was tired of being disrespected in my own home, tired of John defending his sister and her husband while treating me like I was the problem. They were in the other room, probably listening to everything, but I didn't care. I'd had enough. "If that's how you feel, John, then fine. I'll go," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I don't need to stay in a house where I'm not respected." I didn't wait for his response. I walked straight into our bedroom, grabbed a suitcase, and started packing. John didn't try to stop me. He didn't say a word. I think part of him thought I was bluffing, but I wasn't. I was done. I left the house that night. I didn't know exactly where I was going at first, but I knew I needed to get as far away from that situation as possible. After driving around aimlessly for a bit, I remembered this luxury resort I'd heard about from a friend. It was out of the way, quiet, and exactly what I needed. I booked a room and checked in that same night. It felt like stepping into another world. The soft lighting, the comfortable bed, the peace and quiet. It was a stark contrast to the chaos I'd just left behind. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. The next morning, I woke up and did something I never thought I'd do. I called a lawyer. I explained the situation, told them I was done, and asked how I could start the process of filing for divorce. I wasn't going to fight anymore. I wasn't going to argue with John about who was right or wrong. I just wanted out. The resort was everything I needed in that moment. It was a place to clear my head and figure out my next steps. I spent a few days there, lounging by the pool, getting room service, just focusing on myself for once. It felt good, better than I'd felt in a long time. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of a much bigger change. John called a few times, but I ignored him. I wasn't ready to talk yet. I didn't know what I'd even say. All I knew was that I was done with the mess, done with feeling unappreciated, and done with being treated like a second-class citizen in my own home. I deserved better than that. And honestly, it felt good to finally put myself first. The divorce process started off as messy as I expected, but somehow it got worse the minute John started making demands. Honestly, I wasn't even surprised. The second I filed for divorce, John switched into panic mode. It was almost like he couldn't believe I'd actually done it, that I'd walked away, left him and his freeloading family behind, and took control of my life again. But what came next still caught me off guard. His lawyer sent over a list of demands, and it was clear John wasn't just going to let this go. He wanted half of everything, half of my house, half of my savings, and even a chunk of the investments I'd worked so hard for. All I could do was laugh when I read it. The audacity of this guy. He really thought he was going to take everything from me. Here's the thing, though. John never knew the full story. He thought the house we lived in was something I bought after we got married. He believed I'd been paying a mortgage the whole time. He never bothered asking any real questions, and I never went out of my way to explain it either. I mean, why would I? It wasn't like we ever sat down and had a real conversation about finances. He just assumed. In reality, I had bought the house long before we even met. It was all mine. No mortgage. Fully paid off. It was one of the best investments I'd ever made, and I'd kept that information to myself for a reason. I didn't want anyone, not even my husband, to feel entitled to something I'd worked so hard for. Same went for my savings and investments. John thought we were just coasting by on what I made from day trading, but what he didn't know was that I had significant savings and large investments locked away, all of which I'd built before we ever said I do. So when his lawyer came after half of everything, I knew it was time to set the record straight. The day we sat down for mediation, I came in ready. John looked confident at first, like he thought he was about to walk out with half of my life's work. But when we got to the part where his lawyer demanded half of the house, I couldn't help but smirk. "The house?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "John, did you forget? This house isn't part of any marital assets." He blinked at me, clearly confused. "What are you talking about? We bought that house after we got married." I smiled. "You thought we bought it after we got married. But the truth is, I've owned that house since before we even met. It's fully paid off. No mortgage. It's mine, and it always has been." The look on John's face was priceless. His eyes widened as the realization hit him. He opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. He looked over at his lawyer, who was flipping through papers, clearly trying to figure out if what I'd said was true. But it was. There was no way they could touch the house. "And as for my savings and investments," I continued, "all of the major assets you're trying to claim? Those were also in place long before we got married. You're not entitled to any of it." John was silent. I could see the gears turning in his head. He thought he was going to walk out of this divorce with half of everything. He thought he could screw me over, take my hard-earned money, and keep living the good life. But now, he was realizing that he'd been the one being screwed. I leaned forward, keeping my voice calm but firm. "So here's what's going to happen, John. You, Karen, and Mike have 1 week to find a new place. 1 week or I'm kicking all of you out. This is my house, and you have no claim to it. I'm done with this mess. It's over." John's jaw dropped. "1 week?" he repeated, his voice shaky. "But we don't have anywhere to go right now." "That's not my problem," I said, not even blinking. "You had weeks to figure something out, and you didn't. So now you have 7 days. If you're not out by then, I'll have no problem getting the authorities involved." That's when he started scrambling. He must have realized how bad he'd screwed up because suddenly, his whole attitude changed. The confident, cocky guy who had walked into that room was gone. In his place was someone desperate. Someone who had just realized he wasn't walking away with anything close to what he thought. "Anna, wait! Hold on," John said, his voice softening. "We don't need to do this. I'll kick them out today. Karen and Mike will leave, and we can work this out. I'll help around the house. I'll do whatever you want. We can fix this." I almost laughed at how fast he was trying to backtrack. The sudden niceness, the fake promises, It was all so pathetic. I couldn't even look at him without feeling disgusted. "No, John," I said, standing up. "We can't fix this. I'm done. You and your family are out. And trust me, nothing you say is going to change that." I didn't wait for his response. I walked out of the room, leaving him sitting there, probably trying to figure out how everything went so wrong for him. But honestly, that wasn't my problem anymore. That night, I went back to the resort, feeling lighter than I had in months. The weight of everything, the marriage, the mess, the constant stress, was finally lifting off my shoulders. I was free. I was done. And most importantly, I had taken back control of my life. John called me a few more times after that, begging me to give him another chance, but I didn't pick up. I didn't need to hear it. I had already made up my mind. I deserved better than this, and I wasn't going to settle for anything less. And as for Karen and Mike, they packed their bags and left before the week was up, and John followed them 2 days later.